What's up, everybody? Welcome to Ink, Drink, Think, Episode 8. Grab your shovels because we are grave digging on this crazy, spooky episode of Ink, Drink, Think. In honor of Halloween, we are doing some horror villains and horror tropes and horror cliches and classic monsters, everything you would want from a Halloween special. I am your host, Michael Pickard, joined by always by my wonderfully talented spooky co-hosts and friends, Johnny Wise. Johnny, you have the stage.
Hey, how you doing? I'm Johnny. Big horror fan, so I'm very excited for this week's episode. I'm doing The Exorcist this week, which is going to be an interesting one because I've read the book like 3 times and I've never seen the film. I was going to watch it this week, but didn't have time to. So my drawing is pieced together from little snippets I've seen from the movie and my memories of the book. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I found it very scary when I read it every one of those times. So I'm excited to get into that. And tonight I am drinking wine to be extra spooky and Halloweeny.
Nice.
Like
Very Count Dracula of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to do a joke about pretending it's blood, but
Yeah, is it a full-bodied red? Or,
it is.
typo negative?
Yeah. There we go. That's all of them done.
Just let us do the dirty work. You guys make the terrible puns.
Get out of the way. We'll move on.
Nice.
Joining us, of course, our fellow co-host, Nate Wells. Nate, you are up.
Hey, what's up, guys? Today I'm going to be drawing Freddy Krueger. Well, I couldn't decide, actually, before I get into Freddy Krueger. I couldn't decide if I was going to do like a classic gothic horror villain. I really wanted to do that. But I've drawn a lot of those characters before, and I kind of wanted to do something I've never done. And I don't think I've ever drawn Freddy Krueger. I could be wrong. There might be some sketches somewhere. But I really wanted to draw something like really like gothic and like do like the black coat shit, like cloaks and stuff. And so I couldn't decide between having fun and doing something like amazing from the 80s that's just goofy, or doing something amazing and goofy from the 30s. So I thought, why not just combine them? So today I'm going to be doing a gothic Freddy Krueger. So pretty much I'm drawing Jack the Ripper with knives and like a knife glove instead of just like a regular knife. But yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. I got the pencils kind of done. I'm going to be refining a little bit when we get into it. And then I'm really excited to get into the inks. I'm just going to see how much black I can add to this really, really black cloak that I've put him in. Today I'm drinking Shiner to not be spooky at all. It's the national beer of Texas as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, really excited to get into this one.
Great, man. And of course, last but not least, our teacher Todd himself, Todd Blackwood. Todd, you are up, my friend.
Hey, everybody. I went really back and forth as to what I want to do for today. I was going to do Bela Lugosi's Dracula. Then I started thinking about Nosferatu, and then I started thinking about Salem's Lot. And looks like I'm going Salem's Lot at this point. So that's what I've got so far. And I am, of course, reusing an old drawing that I did of a haunted house. So it's kind of a pastiche. I can show you the poster from Salem's Lot, and it's basically the same design but my own drawing as opposed to copying that directly, which was really tempting. But Salem's Lot made a big impression on me as a kid, and by that I mean the miniseries that Tobe Hooper did that was on television. Later on, I read the novel, and it's arguably my favorite horror novel of all time. And I say that as somebody who really feels Stephen King can be hit and miss, but that miniseries was a big deal for me. Probably opened up my love of horror. And I've had lots of coffee, and I think I should not touch another drop. So, so back to you, Michael.
Yeah, of course, man. Well, hey, that Nosferatu drawing is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. You should see, if you haven't seen the miniseries, I think it still holds up, and even if it's just those parts, but man, Yeah. There's some children in danger scenes that still kind of shock me today.
Boy,
Wow.
man, that's perfectly eerie and
Wow.
spooky for today's episode. I love it. It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd forgotten about Salem's Lot. It's going to be fun to talk about. I know I'm not the only one who's a fan. So
Yeah, big fan.
Yeah, you guys can geek out together on Salem's Lot.
Yeah.
I'll just take notes because
Well,
I have not seen it.
I'll definitely need to talk about. I'll definitely want to talk about The Exorcist as well, and
yeah.
Freddy Krueger, and everybody else. So The Thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to segue from
Yeah.
Todd's point right there, I'm Michael Pickard, and tonight I am going to be working on this piece from John Carpenter's The Thing. Due to my schedule, I was kind of trying to figure out what to do last minute, and I came up with this kind of middle point where I do a trade or a playing card type effect where you can flip the image, and it has two different heads on it that blend together. So up top here we have MacReady as beautifully portrayed by the handsome Kurt Russell.
Yeah.
Love
So
that
handsome.
reference sheet.
Gotta love the reference sheet with that Farrah Fawcett hair. But
Yeah.
so I have
his hair is half the movie.
Oh yeah, absolutely. it's a beautiful piece of
Isn't it?
manliness.
Isn't it, though? So good. Yeah.
Something we should all aspire towards.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
But so in the background, I have some of the Arctic landscape with like the base kind of in the background, some smoke. And then if you flip it, it's going to blend into this image of the monster. So I kind of have the one face that has like a half bald head, this guy right here. And I have some elements like these stalk eyes, like a snail protruding out of this head over here. And I have the dog famously on this side. And some hands popping out everywhere because the thing is an amorphous kind of terror. But for the start of today's episode, I'm going to be going a little bit different. I'm going to be penciling to begin with. Just refining some of the work on the alien and then getting into the inks probably towards the end of this first half or in the start of part 2. But anyways, guys, to start off the episode, I thought it would be appropriate with our horror theme and how broad a topic that is to kind of pull into some niche categories. For you three, what are either your favorite horror monster categories in a broad sense, whether that means vampires, werewolves, zombies, or you could go very specific with it, whether it's a specific horror icon, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, the girl from The Exorcist. But for you three, what are your favorite horror monsters?
Oh gosh.
And you can go broad with it because I'm a
picked,
vampire guy personally. I think vampires, not the Twilight kind, but the actual terrifying
That's the scariest
creatures
kind.
of the night. Yeah, they might be my favorite.
Vampires are like
Yeah, I like a
Batman.
vampire.
To me, it all works. So I got nothing against the Twilight stuff, although I haven't seen those movies. So, but yeah, that's probably not ultimately the hardcore fan of that stuff.
Yeah, for me, it's
Yeah, no, sorry, go on, Johnny.
I was just going to say, I mean, the reason I picked The Exorcist, despite having not seen it yet, is I have always found like possession stories probably the scariest. Although I love all horror, but I don't know, something about like the biblical aspect. I am not a religious man, but it maybe that's why, because I'm not very religious, but like possession stories are like, nope, it's all real. And it's all much more horrible than you'd think.
Yeah.
That's kind of the scary thing about demons is like, if you do grow up religious, you are like, oh, these things are real.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
there are demons out there. And so, you watch a werewolf movie and there's nothing in the Bible that I know of about werewolves, but Satan's a thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it adds a little bit of that like real world scary to it, even though it is like supernatural, if you are religious.
Right. Well, that's what's great about The Exorcist, though. Is it's like, you could say like the priest himself, of all people, is struggling with his faith. At the beginning, like, I don't think I can do this anymore. I'm not into it. I don't believe. And then he's forced into a situation that challenges that, and it's that's one of the things that's so relatable. It's such a existential question of like, what's the point of getting out of bed in the morning if everything's terrible?
Yeah.
And it's such a, there's so much actual drama going on in that movie. In a way, it's interesting because he rediscovers whatever his faith is, and the doing good or whatever it is that the conclusion he comes to. It's genuinely scary for that reason.
Yeah, plus like heads twist all the way around and stuff. That happens too.
Well,
On top of all of
yeah,
that, you got like
but
that shit
still
going on.
But you still haven't seen the movie, which is crazy. That's kind of exciting. I mean,
I know. I'm really excited to
have a
watch it.
movie that great that you haven't seen.
I'm
You're
pretty
the only
excited for
person
it.
I've ever heard of who's familiar with the book and the story and has never seen the movie. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. I was like, I went through a real
Saving it up.
phase of like reading a couple years ago, like all the time, which I said on like an episode recently. And I was like, it was around a couple of Octobers ago that I started to be like, I really want to. I'm always keen to like relive like the fear you get as a kid when you watch a horror movie.
Oh yeah.
I've never really got that again, and I'm always I always want to, and I wanted to find a book because I was always kind of like, I don't know whether a book can be really scary, and I was trying to find one, and The Exorcist was the biggest one where I was like, while I was reading it when it was like at night, I would be like, I'm actually pretty afraid right now. I haven't really come across that since in a book as an adult.
You don't feel now, but you've read Salem's Lot, right? Because I felt Salem's Lot was that way. Like Salem's Lot actually scared me, and I was surprised.
Salem's Lot scared me a lot as a kid, and then when I reread it as an adult, I still loved it, but I wasn't really afraid, like The Exorcist. Like it wasn't like it would get like to nighttime, and I would genuinely be quite creeped out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Still very creepy, but not the same. I have I'm growing a high threshold for horror as well because I'm a real big fan, which is kind of like it's an annoying thing in that like the more you get into it, the less scary you find some of the stuff you watch. So you just trying to find something that'll do it.
Right. Well, it's that difference between the shocking people and something that settles in and bothers you the more you think about it or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I like about ghost stories. I don't enjoy seeing people getting hurt, which is kind of my problem with slasher movies in general. I mean, there's great ones, don't get me wrong, but I feel like Halloween is both a great film, but it also was a point where horror kind of took a turn that I didn't really care for. And so for me, I'm less into characters like Freddy Krueger and whatnot. But I appreciate them.
I'm similar in that I don't want to watch a horror movie just to watch people get hurt. But equally, I can't think of many horror movies that have where it ends happily, where I really like the ending. I always think like when they end happily, it ruins it for me a bit.
Yeah, I couldn't. That's actually a problem I have with Stephen King. I feel like his stories kind of end a little too happily sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing I like about Salem's Lot is it's so dark. The ending is so dark, and it's just like it never lets up. It's just like no, everything's bad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to reveal.
You have no choice but to run
because Mike hasn't read it, but
right.
I hope you don't mind me saying, Mike, that
no, go ahead.
It isn't resolved by the end.
Yeah.
Great. Now I don't have to read it or watch it.
Oh no, you should.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we should say for this episode that are we just gonna straight up spoil most of the things we talk about? Is that a concern of anyone's?
I feel like we usually do with comics.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the sake of the episode, for anybody watching, if we start talking about a movie or a book you haven't read yet, or film you haven't seen, or TV show, just tune out. Just mute it for a while. I don't have the editing capabilities to put in a spoiler warning flag on the screen, so watch at your own caution.
We'll just say it now.
Yeah. Viewer discretion
Sorry.
advised.
Good
Sorry.
luck.
Yeah, it's funny actually that I'm drawing Freddy Krueger because I'm not actually a huge fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. I think they're a lot of fun. I do actually. I get a big kick out of slasher movies. Not like just because like people get hacked up. I think that generally they're a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
It's like goofy horror that you can watch and just kind of like get
Totally.
vaguely like, like, oh, whoa, but it's not actually scary.
Yeah.
But in trying to do this concept, I was thinking about, more modern, 80s and onward characters that I could translate into like a gothic sort of like kind of a time frame or take some of the storytelling elements that a lot of the old gothic horror novels have. And Freddy Krueger was kind of the obvious choice because he is kind of a supernatural demon who invades your sleep. Because I kind of wanted to draw Jason. I'm a bigger fan of Friday the 13th because those movies are just really, really goofy, and I just have a lot of fun watching those. But Freddy was the obvious choice. I don't really care actually about Freddy Krueger for this concept at all. It's like the idea of a guy who enters your sleep and torments you in your sleep that
Oh, it's a great idea. Yeah.
it's a great idea. The execution in those movies is lacking, maybe. And I know that they like tried to reboot it, and that movie wasn't great either. But and sort of like the fictional classic horror movie that I've written in my head that I'm drawing from now, he's like really scary and really cool. Because that's the thing about Freddy too, is like he's a slasher villain that has personality. A lot of times there's just these like like Michael Myers is the Shape. He's not a guy. He's just this robot killer.
Right.
Jason Voorhees is kind of just a robot killer. And Freddy like has one-liners and he has a face that can emote. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
And I really struggle with this drawing, like having him. I feel like a lot of times he's just having like a lot of fun torturing the kids.
Sure.
But I just kept drawing him with kind of this like more intense kind of scowl on his face. And I was like, that kind of fits maybe. I'm thinking about this drawing as kind of like if I made a poster for this fictional movie that I have in my head, what would it look like? And the smile just wasn't working. I don't know if it gave him a little something that weirdly enough, the smile felt a little more modern to me. And so I wanted to keep him. Yeah, I wanted to keep him kind of in that. Like if I made a poster for like James Whale's Frankenstein, or that Bela Lugosi Dracula, I don't know if they'd be like grinning,
That makes sense.
But that's the thing about Freddy is that he also doesn't just always have a smile on his face. He's got a whole range of emotions that he goes through.
Yeah.
He's trying to kill teenagers in their sleep.
Yeah, he's certainly more interesting than God, I don't know. He's got more in common with the Joker, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, Todd, that's a great comparison, especially for more of those.
I haven't thought about it until just now, but yeah.
Yeah, those like pop culture type horror villains, whether it's Freddy or Jason for that matter. They're closer to like comic book villains as opposed to actual terrifying threats in terms of their presentation. Like in concept, Freddy Krueger is terrifying. Like that concept alone is like heart-poundingly horrific. But his presentation is this fun, laughing, kind of jester-like guy who's running around and making one-liners and
he's kind of a supervillain in that way.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's something that I don't think horror really had until then, was like these huge iconic pop culture figures like Freddy and Jason
Yeah.
that just took over. You know, there's a movie like every year, and
Yeah.
people just ate them up. And I mean, I don't know if there's any of them that are actually really good. I
Well,
rewatched the original last night, and I was like, I like this movie. The
original-
ideas are great. The original Nightmare.
okay. Wow.
But it's just not a good movie, really.
It's got its moments.
It does. There's a lot of imagery in that movie that really works, and the way they
Yeah.
tackle sort of the transition between like, there's the scene in like Nancy, the main character. She's like dozing off in class,
Oh yeah.
and you know, you start getting into this like, did she fall asleep or is she still awake? Is she seeing things? And the way they
Right.
handle that sort of like ambiguous transition between like asleep and awake is, I think, pretty true to life. You don't know when you fall asleep.
No, you
uh,
don't. Isn't that strange?
Yeah, and dreams are so weird that you don't realize that there's like the line in Inception. It's like, we don't realize things are, I'm paraphrasing. You know, you don't
No,
realize
totally.
how weird your dreams are until you wake up and you think about it.
Oh yeah.
And so they're completely real while you're in them.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a dream recently where this guy I know with long hair and a beard was outside, and he was surrounded by a bunch of little kids who were all yelling at him. He was like, "You need to quit doing that, kid." It was like his kids, except they all had long hair and beards just like him. And I remember thinking I was like, something weird about this, but I can't put my finger on it. And it wasn't until I woke up that I was like, what the hell was that?
We have I say we. I came across a while ago a story of like
Excuse me.
in Cornwall. Apparently, they have like in Mornan in Cornwall. They have a mythological thing that's called the Owl Man of Mornan, and it is like it's like there's been like multiple sightings of it, and all of the experts are like, oh, it's a big owl. Sometimes owls get a lot bigger than you think they would be, and they have like man-sized wingspans. But
That's
I
pretty
had a-
big.
yeah, pretty big, and I had like a couple of my friends. I like told them about it a while ago, and then we were gonna, for a while now, we've been pretty set on one day doing a trip to see the Owl Man of Morning, and we'll just like stay in like a van and camp in like near the woods and just set off in the night and try and see it, which still hasn't happened, but I'm pretty keen to do it and find out, because I just find the idea of an owl man as something that everyone's really afraid of really, really funny. And you can Google it, and there's loads of like kids' drawings of like what they saw, and it's got like big glowing red eyes.
Oh, wow.
That's
I really
amazing.
want to see the owl man.
Yeah. Interesting.
Do you guys have any particular favorite horror films or stories, for that matter? It could be a novel. if you
Where
wanna
do I
get on that
start?
track.
Yeah,
a lot.
so many.
Yeah.
I'm really excited at the moment. We're in a very good time for horror. With like
Thank you, A24. Yeah.
A24 just they haven't released a bad one yet. We're going to see Saint Maud tomorrow, and I'm very excited for it.
What's that? Saint Maud?
Saint Maud, like Maud, maybe E.
Yeah.
Honestly, I
Haven't heard
don't.
of it.
With a lot of horror movies, especially A24, I kind of just trust A24. So I don't know what it's about. Really. There's a lot of religious elements, but I've watched one trailer a while ago that didn't give a lot away, but there's one really horrible looking bit with like she puts like a nail in the sole of a shoe and then puts it in her shoe and then just like steps into the shoe. I don't know what's going on there, but it looks fucking horrible. I can't wait to see it.
Sounds like someone's trying to pass a lie detector test.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, that's all. I still need to check out what this whole A24 thing is, because I don't know.
Oh yeah, you do.
Yeah. You've seen The Witch, right?
Oh, of course, yeah. That's not. Is that A24?
Yeah, that's A24. Yeah, that's A24.
What? Really? Was the
And have you
Lighthouse as well?
seen
Because that's the same director.
The Lighthouse was?
Yep.
Yeah, Lighthouse was
Really?
A24.
Oh, so
They
now
haven't made a bad. I mean, they haven't made really a bad movie yet, but they haven't.
What
They
about
certainly haven't made a
Hereditary?
bad horror movie.
Is
Yep,
Hereditary?
A24
Oh,
and Midsummer.
what?
Get Out
No.
was
Mhm.
Blumhouse, though, right?
Yeah, Get Out was
Yeah.
Blumhouse.
Yeah, there's
Which
some
they
good
have- they have some
Blumhouse.
good
They
Not know that.
they can be hit or miss,
Wow.
but Blumhouse is pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're always
Interesting.
kind of like they're not of the caliber of like A24, where they're like a really good film
Right.
necessarily. Sometimes, I mean, you got like a Get Out, but I do always enjoy a Blumhouse as well.
Interesting. I would say The Witch was the first horror film I've seen in a long time that really worked like that.
Yeah.
Like that. And to me, I think it was all came down to there was some great stuff, but that ending was what clinched it. I went, oh,
Mm.
okay, this
Yeah,
is the
yeah,
ending
definitely.
you need in a horror movie. I think to exaggerate, Poltergeist has like one of the greatest horror film ending of all time, but there's a roller coaster element to it too, so I wouldn't hardly the thing to compare to like The Exorcist. But The Witch, like I was like, okay, that ended exactly the way it should have, and I was kind of worried it wasn't going to go there. And they
Yeah, the ending's
did
fucking
it, and I
terrifying.
went, oh, well done. That movie, that ending
Yeah.
could have really, face planted if done wrong.
Mm. Yeah.
I thought okay, spoilers. I thought for sure that it was all going to be in the girl's head, and they were gonna
Yeah, you wonder
not
that
go there.
back and forth,
And
don't you?
it still could have been, but man, yeah.
I thought the
I
same
need to
thing with
rewatch
Did you
it.
guys see 10 Cloverfield Lane?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I love that
Didn't-
film. And that was
Did
another
you?
one where, again, spoilers. Did you not like it?
I haven't seen it yet, and it's okay to spoil it. I really don't care. I've heard enough about
I
it.
don't know whether I
that
will actually with this one.
Oh,
for you.
yeah. Well,
Yeah, because the whole point
uh,
of the film is like you go back and forth all the time of like, so basically, I mean, this is in the trailer, so this isn't spoiling, but like a girl gets kidnapped. She like gets knocked out in a car accident and wakes up in a guy's like bunker, and he's
with,
like, there was an
John
apocalyptic
Goodman.
event. Yeah, John Goodman's bunker, and he's like, there was an apocalyptic event. There are aliens. It's not safe to go outside. And throughout the whole film, you have no idea whether he's telling the truth or not.
Wow.
So I don't think I will. I won't spoil the ending for you because I think you should watch it. It's really good. It's really good.
I do enjoy a well done. Well, okay. Let me ask this: are any of the other movies found footage, or is it just that first one?
Just the first one.
Oh, that's interesting. I
Yeah.
would have assumed that found footage would have been part of the whatever you want to call it, DNA of the story.
Yeah. No,
I
it's
do
really cool when they
admire-
lead into like the second one. Sorry, I was just gonna say when they
Yeah.
like lead into the second
go
one, it's
for it.
cool that like there's almost nothing connecting them except like the theme of like aliens or whatever. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. Wow.
I also think after Paranormal Activity and the huge boom of found footage style movies, that it's good that they didn't stick to that as like, this is our thing. Because I think that would have, one, dated those films or like any subsequent films after the first one. But it also, I think, is a somewhat limiting storytelling technique. There's a lot you can do with it in the found footage. But
if you were going to do it as a series, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If it's an anthology series, it works that one of them is that way, but not every single one.
Yeah.
I love Paranormal Activity. I think those are great movies.
I never saw any of those.
Oh, really?
I haven't seen them.
I've seen all of them.
What do you
There's
think?
some good stuff there. I don't love
really
them.
Don't like them.
I don't love them.
Yeah.
I think the whole like found footage thing,
Yeah.
it works in some movies, and Paranormal Activity, to its credit, is one of those movies that it really works. But
right.
I'm so there for a while. Like when I was like late high school, early college, every horror movie was found footage because they're so cheap to make.
Right.
And there's so many of them that just, I remember seeing one, and I do not remember what it's called, but it's got the guy who plays Matt Saracen from Friday Night Lights in it. and it's something about like a demon baby. I don't know, but
Boss
I
Baby.
remember seeing that in theater with my then girlfriend, and she was all into it. It was like a packed house, and so we had to sit like on the front row. And so I'm looking up at this giant screen, and it's like shaky cam, and I got so like motion sick that I just had to
Oh, did
listen
ya?
to that movie,
Yeah.
and that really turned me off to like all found footage, because I was like,
Yeah.
never again.
I can see that.
And it just doesn't work
enjoyed-
for every movie. It just doesn't work. There's some if it fits the
Well,
form. There's
super
sometimes where you can
right.
tell they're shoehorning it, like that mode of storytelling, into the story.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this movie would be good were it not for the found footage aesthetic.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're
I
like,
would find
why
it, like-
why would you be recording right now? Why are you recording this?
That's it.
Well,
when they have to like
yeah.
find a narrative reason that's really off with like why it's still being found footage. I always find it really strange.
Yeah. Well, it's
Although
to me that's the interesting thing about it is it's like, but to an extent you have to. That's probably a trope of any horror film is why you're running towards the danger, and I do appreciate the writing sort of challenge of that. Of like, oh, you have to let like Cloverfield. I know a lot of people really hated that movie, and Paranormal Activity probably as well, where it's like, dude, why are you not just running right now from everything?
Yeah.
But you want to see the monster, and so you buy into it.
I think Cloverfield actually got around that pretty well. That
Oh, totally.
issue we were talking about in terms of like why you're still recording. Like there are scenes in the movie where they're like, dude, why are you holding the camera? Like
Yeah.
it starts off he's recording the party, and then it transitions into he's like, I'm just gonna keep a record of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do it just
Yeah,
enough to make you not get past it. You're like, okay.
Yeah, and it's actually a really cool narrative device in that movie where they flash back to like other pieces of footage on that SD card. I'm assuming it's a digital camera, where like it shows like clips of the
Right.
main character and his girlfriend before they broke up, like being
Right.
together. I think it does add some kind of like context to the movie in like a believable fashion of like, oh, it's a corrupt file that's like corrupted with like other stuff on this hard drive that was found during this terrible pandemic or this terrible attack
that's
on
right.
New York.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, that was very
That
good.
was how it went. Yeah.
Also, on the subject of found footage, and before I say this, I've been thinking about it, and I would like to go back on my original answer. I like possession stories and find them scary, but my favorite horror movie monster or horror anything monster is witches. I find them. I'm so into terrifying witchy shit.
Witches
Um,
are scary.
Just in
Witches
general,
are
or
scary.
movie witches?
The movie was great, but in general, any story with witches, I'm gonna be pretty afraid. Like actual scary witches, like in The Witch. I don't really like it when like story has witches and it's like a hot woman. I'm always like, that's not frightening to me. But the Blair Witch, on the subject of found footage movies, is fucking great. I rewatched that again the other day.
Say that again. The Witch was found footage.
No, the Blair Witch.
Oh yeah,
That's a good one.
Did you guys didn't see that in the theater, did you?
No, but it was
No.
a big deal at the time, right?
Yeah. I got a story for you. So I saw that movie, and I remember one in the theater, and I remember one of the things that kept me sane was, okay, this isn't real. You know what I mean?
You're having to remind yourself.
Yeah, because it felt really real, especially because it was really unusual, and I think I was also stoned out of my mind, which was not a good idea, I might add. But anyways, like 6 months later, I was talking to my uncle at a family party, and we started talking about that movie, and I slowly started, and then he was like, wait, you mean that movie wasn't real? And I was like, are you kidding? You thought that movie's real for the last 6 months? I was like, dude, I would have lost my mind if I thought that movie was real.
People did though, apparently, didn't they? A lot of people did.
Yeah.
That was the marketing of that movie.
Found footage hadn't really been done.
Yeah. Well, it had its precedence for sure. But yeah, it hadn't been done like that, you know.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever have you guys seen, so there's two movies that it was kind of influenced by, and that was uh Cannibal Holocaust. You guys know
Oh
about that
yeah,
one?
yeah,
I've heard
yeah.
about it, yeah.
Yeah.
They actually, there was a warrant out for the arrest of the director because they actually thought that he'd murdered the actors. Kid you not.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
the actors had to actually produce themselves in court and be like, no, we're alive. It's okay. It was just a movie. But the
Wow.
other one that was interesting was a movie that came out only a few years before called The Last Broadcast. And I think Blair Witch is actually a really smart reaction to that movie, because that movie in some ways is the exact same movie as the Blair Witch Project, except it's about some cable access guys that go out in search of the Jersey Devil. Um, and I'd recommend watching it, but it's a great movie, and then it blows it at the end.
Oh man,
And the Blair
that's a
Witch
big one
kind
for
of,
horror movies.
yeah, but it's worth watching, because you're like, oh, this is exactly where they got the idea for the Blair Witch Project, except they're like, no, you like, they learned from their mistakes, and I think that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, Last Broadcast is great, but man, if I'd thought the Blair Witch Project was real, ugh, Jesus, I would have gone crazy.
Yeah, it was. I know that was my aunt's first horror film, and she never recovered.
I bet. I could see somebody never being able to watch a horror movie again after that.
Yeah.
Got to ease into that stuff a little bit.
I recently watched the new Invisible Man, actually, just the other night.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know, I need to watch it again to like get into like analyzing it, but there's definitely something there about, you know, there's this invisible force, an invisible masculine force that's dictating this woman's life. You know, everything about it is dictated by her fear of this guy, her being controlled by this guy. Like I said, I don't know exactly what's there. I've only seen it once, and when I watch a movie for the first time, I try and just enjoy it, and take in the plot, so that on a second viewing, I can then kind of go in and probably pick up on some things I missed. And I'm probably not even the right person to be making this analysis, but there's something there to me about that. And someone's in the comments screaming right now, like, it's this, obviously, you idiot. But yeah, I mean, there's you know, like a lot of, like, in the slasher movies, like the, you know, like sexual virtue is like a big thing.
Oh, right.
In those movies, the
Yeah.
people that like have sex always die.
Right.
Yeah, there's so much of that in horror. Horror is often a vehicle for like telling story, like virtuous stories, weirdly enough.
Right. Yeah. Well, it makes it easier to accept that the people who die deserve it for some reason. I think, you know, as opposed to like the good people dying. I mean, that's my take on it, kind of. Or I don't know if that quite was what you were. I think maybe I got off subject there.
No, yeah. And it's weird how, like, in more modern movies, there's something, you know, kind of like The Witch. She's brought up in this ultra religious household, and something about the period really lends itself to that. I think that's a great way to kind of like illustrate the power of religion, that they had to like leave their village because of their religious, how extreme their religious beliefs were. And like, she finally feels free and powerful when it completely rejects that.
Right. I have to
Not to say you
always,
join Legion, you know, like with the devil to do that, but you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that's what I really liked about The Witch, is like, you're kind of like, on one side you're like, oh, good for her, but also it's fucking terrifying, that ending. So scary.
Yeah. And
so
it
horrible.
still could have been all in her mind. She could have imagined all of it when it boils down to it. She could have just completely lost it. I don't.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
not how I choose to see it, and I don't think that was the intention of the movie. But there is that. Is any of this real at this point? You know, or is
Yeah,
she
well,
just
Robert
so
Eggers,
traumatized that?
the director has that with the Lighthouse as well. He really
Mhm.
delved into it there. Where like I was
Uh,
watching an interview with Robert Pattinson in that, where he like asked Robert Eggers when they were like early on with the movie, where he was like what he thought was a very simple question, where he was like, "How much of this is real?" And Robert Eggers just wouldn't answer him. He was just like, "You have to
Wow.
figure that out for yourself." He was
Yeah.
like, "I'm the fucking one of the starring actors in it, one of two actors in it, basically." And
Yeah.
you can't even be told whether it's real.
Yeah. I can understand that though. He's kind of like, that's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
point.
definitely.
Is this real or not?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
because once
especially
he
with the Lighthouse. Where like,
if he says, "Oh well, my intention was that none of this was real," and they lost their minds, then everybody's going to go into that
Mhm.
yeah, definitely.
without making up their own minds about what they think they experienced or whatever. I could see it.
Mm. Yeah, no, it's a great move. It's
Yeah.
also just very funny that Robert Pattinson was just working on it, like having to figure out the movie at the same time.
Yeah.
Would
Totally.
you call that a horror movie?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It's tough with like movies like that because it's also just a weird movie. Like it's tough to categorize it because it's
Yeah,
just so
because
fucking weird.
yeah, it's unlike any movie I had ever seen before. It's more of like an art
Yeah.
piece than a narrative
Hmm.
story.
Hmm.
But yeah, it is unnerving for sure at scenes.
Mm. I think I would call it more horror than anything else.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's weird
But it's
because
just
like I
quite.
watched that movie with my mom, and my mom won't watch horror. But when I was like, "Hey, do you want to watch The Lighthouse?" It's on, HBO or whatever now, uh, or Amazon, whatever it was. She was like, "Yeah, I've been wanting to watch that," and I was like, "Oh, really?" Kind of said it as a joke, but yeah, I'll turn it on. Um,
I
and
watched
we
it with my
we walked
father.
away, and she was like, "That's weird." That was weird, but
Yeah,
I don't think that she was like scared out of her mind because she also my mom like watched The Shining when she was a kid, and it like terrified her, and so she like
Yeah.
won't watch horror movies now. And I always joke like, "Hey, do you want to watch this movie?" And she's like, "No, of course not."
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
The Lighthouse, she was like, "Yeah."
Wow.
Similarly, I watched it with my dad, and we turned off the movie, and he was just like, "That was a weird fucking movie," and walked away. He was like, "That was
That's
weird."
funny. Wow.
The Shining, though, you brought that up a second ago, Nate. That's a movie for me that I watched it in college, and I had ramped it up in my head, going, "All right, I'm about to watch one of the scariest movies of all time."
Hmm.
And I wasn't particularly scared by any of it, but I
Yeah.
of course, will credit Stanley Kubrick for making an incredible movie. It definitely has a
Right.
really engaging story and awesome
Yeah.
visuals.
Mm.
But it's interesting how when times change, how differently we're affected by certain levels of horror. Like you just said,
Right.
like your mom was like petrified by The Shining, but today, like if you showed that to like most people, they'd be like, "Oh, it's kind of campy looking. It's kind of corny."
Hmm.
Yeah, it's
Well,
weird, and it's
what,
weird as
Stanley
well how like
or The Shining?
Yeah, I would think so. Oh, well, at least maybe not The Shining, but other horror movies like what's a great example? Even The Exorcist to some extent. Like as much as I think that movie does hold up, um,
Yeah.
like the special effects in that movie.
Hmm.
Like if you watch it separately from like the actually watching the movie, like if you just watched clips of like all of the scenes where the girl is possessed, and you just
Right.
showed it to somebody who had never seen the movie, that might be like, oh, that's kind of silly looking.
Right.
yeah, yeah,
But like, of
Yeah, I
course,
I
like
watched
when
was
it
it.
came
also
out, it was like terrifying.
yeah. I find it interesting how that also when you're like an adult doesn't change for the movies that did scare you. Like I still find Tim Curry as it really, really scary, even though I also find the whole movie really like goofy.
Yeah.
Whereas as a kid, it just that just like broke me.
Did it?
Yeah, I remember.
See that.
That's kind of what I've been trying to like recreate the
Mm,
fear of as a kid, like because I used to be like for like a solid month at least after watching that movie, I was like afraid to go to bed and also like
Yeah.
resigned to it. Like every night, my
Yeah.
mum would just be like, "All right, night," and she'd be like, "Sleep well," and I'd just be like smiling and like, "I won't. I definitely won't again. I didn't last night. I won't tonight." And I was just
Wow.
like, I would go up to bed, all the lights would get turned off, and I would just lie in bed like
Well, I mean,
pouring sweat, like just
wow.
like shitting myself, just like I'm fucking terrified, like the whole night.
And how old were you? Would you say?
I want to
18.
say like, yeah. This was a couple years ago. When my mum was still tucking me into bed.
Never know.
I was like 10, maybe. I was definitely still in like primary school.
Wow.
Maybe like 9 or 10, and just like it was just Tim Curry's performance in it was
Yeah.
just terrifying to me because he was
What-
just. I mean, I've said this on like multiple episodes already, but it was the fact that he was just like a man. I know in like the Thing he was like a monster, but he didn't
Right.
talk in like a scary voice. He talked like a New York taxi driver or something, and
Yeah.
would just like the kids would all be playing, and it would be a nice scene, and they would just look over the river, and there would just be a
Right.
clown there like waving, and he'd be like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill you tonight," and it just
Yeah.
terrifying.
Wow.
He just
Was
promised them he was gonna kill him.
Did you think it was actually scary when you watched it, or was it one of those things that was you watched, but then when you went to bed, it really sunk in?
No,
Sounds
that
like
was one where I was when I was
got you right
watching
away,
it,
huh?
I was terrified. But
Wow.
yeah, it was when I went to bed that I really, really like was like almost weeping.
Wow. Did your mom say anything like, "Is something the matter?"
Oh yeah, she knew fully what was happening. She was like,
Yeah. She was like,
because
"Get
I
over
remember she was really good. The night that the problem was solved was just like
Oh.
she was like, all right, you know what, I'm just gonna sit with you, and she just sat with me like all night until I fell asleep. She was just like,
Wow.
she's like, we'll sort this out. I'll just be here, so you won't be afraid,
Yeah.
and you can get a little bit of
Aw.
sleep. And
Good
then
job,
since
Mom.
then, I was fine after that.
Yeah. Wow. Jesus. That's a tough one.
Yeah, and I
Like,
remember
what
feeling
what
quite
do you
bad because I
do?
could like see how tired she was. She was just like
Yeah.
knackered, just having to stay awake
Yeah.
with me.
Oh. Wow.
And I think she knew that like if she fell asleep, because like I'd started to drift off, but I think she knew that like if I fell asleep and then woke up in the night and she wasn't there, there would be like a breach of trust. Like you
Oh,
you
so
said
she
all
stayed
night.
there all night, even when you fell asleep, huh?
Yeah, because I did wake
Wow.
up at one point and she was still there.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
Holy
commitment.
moly.
That's so sweet,
It is,
dude.
yeah.
That's so
Yeah,
sweet.
that is.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
That was very nice.
That's the reality of being a parent in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Is, that's the stuff you're like, oh, I'm a parent. My parent
Yeah,
brain is
right?
kicking
Because
in,
you
and
know
this
it's
is what
not
I got to
real.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine doing that. Look, I'm
Yeah.
not. You're not scared of it.
But you remember, yeah. I mean, you remember being a kid and being scared of stuff as well, and you feel for
Yeah.
them. I would imagine.
What do you guys think about it?
I think as a concept it's great, and then in the book it loses it in certain parts. And also in the book, because it's like set in the 40s, I think. It like turns into what the kids are scared of, and it's terrifying when it's a clown. But there's like chapters where they'll like. There's one bit where the kid is like walking home and it's like really cold and the canal is like frozen, and he looks out of the canal and it has turned into the Mummy. And I'm like reading it and I'm like, well, I'm not afraid of the Mummy, so I don't. It's all written very well, but it's like I don't find this scary because I don't find the Mummy scary.
I find the one with
would I
Tom
find
Cruise
the Mummy?
scary.
Yeah, if it turned into Tom Cruise
Tom Cruise
grinning
is
and
pretty
cackling,
scary.
yeah. just shouting that he's in love with Katie Holmes while he kills you.
Jumping up and down on the couch.
That would be really scary. Tom
Yeah.
Cruise should be a horror movie villain. That would be great.
That would
Yeah.
be great.
Like played as Tom Cruise, just played
Yeah.
really gritty, like ha 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 ha.
I can see him doing it actually.
Yeah,
Tom Cruise should be Frankenstein's monster.
yeah,
He
Good.
looks physically perfect, but on the inside, there's a corrupt element.
yeah.
Well, Frankenstein starts out as handsome, in the novel. Like he's not. It's very.
Yeah, I thought
different.
that was a great.
Yeah.
That was a great element to put in. That like like Frankenstein thinks the monster is like beautiful, and then he comes alive and it's like everything that he thought was beautiful is disgusting and wrong.
Yeah.
Basically, like an old timey, uncanny valley, I guess.
True.
What's that?
Yeah.
What's Uncanny Valley? What is that?
It's the thing. It's used like it's a term used in a lot of special effects and prosthetics and things, where basically there's like a how to put it best. So like as a robot, like R2-D2 is cute and not scary because he's nothing like a person. He's just like a little box that goes like beep boop beep. But then the closer it comes to looking like a person, you notice like tiny things that are wrong without really realizing it.
Yeah, like things are scary when they're almost human, but it's off.
Yeah, and it happens a lot.
Scary
with, like,
or just wrong, and not necessarily scary, but yeah, it's just it's odd when something is almost right.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, a good
That's
example
weird.
is
I've
all
never
of
heard
the,
that term before. I mean, I've heard it, but that's weird. I didn't know what that's what that meant.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
the
typically
perfect
used in
example,
reference
I
to
think.
like CGI. When they CGI
Yeah, I
a
was just
human
gonna say.
being and it looks close but isn't perfect.
Your eye is
Yeah,
picking up
like
something.
Polar Express
Yeah.
yeah,
or
What
all
is-
of the de-aging they're doing in Hollywood now. They get Uncanny Valley a lot of the time there.
That's something that's actually, you guys watch any Red Letter Media or Mr. Plinkett? You guys know that?
oh,
Yeah, I've watched his Star
Yeah.
Wars stuff. Yeah.
That's one thing that sticks with me that he says a lot is he goes, "You might not notice, but your brain does." And I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
true. Your brain does notice. You can
yeah.
tell
You
yourself
know when it's wrong.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Same thing like with a drawing. You know when it's not right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say we could start hopping around. Todd, why don't we actually start with you? Having you
Yeah.
spoken first, I'll start
Okay.
with you.
Don't. Pretty interesting. I'm pretty interested in where this is going exactly.
Damn, dude.
I love that type.
Yeah.
Damn,
Oh
man.
man, yeah.
I drew that over. It's funny because I saw recently on somebody's Instagram post a paperback cover of Salem's Lot, and for the most part, I hate every paperback cover I've pretty much ever seen of Salem's Lot, with one or two exceptions. But the type that I saw on this one, I was like, I hate everything about that except that type. That type is awesome. So I took that type and I took that image and put it in Procreate and then drew over it with a ribbon brush, if that makes any sense. And I thought it worked. And then I did an image of that's actually let's see, that's the Max Schreck version of Nosferatu, but the with the body and the cape and everything, but the Salem's Lot version of Nosferatu's face, and then the haunted house behind him. And I'm still kind of making it up as I go along, but I gotta put his eyes in, and yeah, it's a lot of different ways I could go on this, I think.
It's looking
Trying to-
fantastic.
Yeah, Todd, if
that's great.
anything, I think you're just exemplifying that you really do need to make a collection of ghost stories because this is fantastic. Like the color choices you're using, the shading on that face, Oh, it's spooky, but it's so you, like it pops in the way that your art does. It's awesome.
Mm.
It's all about shape. Like I'm realizing that the one of the main things for me that's really changed is I stopped trying to. I still draw lines. Don't get me wrong, but like for me, what's great about digital is I can really concentrate on shape. And it was interesting because one of you guys was saying that you listened to the Walt Simonson Drink and Draw, and you sold me on it. I was like, oh, I gotta listen to that. And at one point, he started talking about shape and how really his drawings were all a bunch of shapes. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. I feel like I must be onto something by having the same conclusion. And so I'm paying even more attention to shape right now. Excuse me. I think it's good. It helps with design, but yeah, I'm really excited to get into those ghost stories. How's the drawings going with you guys?
I was about to say, well, hey Johnny, I see you're putting some color in there as well.
Mm.
Let's fly
Well,
over
not
there.
yet.
Oh,
These
you
are
tricked me.
yeah. I always trick you. These are my pencils that I've made kind of green. I think my colors are going to go pretty green.
Green's always good for horror.
Yeah, this is where we're at with the inks right now. Let me just pop that back into here we are. This is where we're at. I've got some of the groom set up.
Yeah, that's looking real good.
Yeah, thanks. I got real fabricy with it, which I didn't expect to do.
Yeah.
But everything is really like swirly, which I like. Pretty much just her with the twisted round head in like a trashed room. I can't wait to get into the. I'm gonna have like splatters all over the room, but I don't know whether they're gonna be black or green or something. But yeah, pretty much just at this point right now. I'm having a lot of fun with this one. All of the fabrics and the smashed up room and the bed.
It looks like it.
Yeah,
or maybe
that's awesome, man. That level of detail is fantastic.
Yeah,
In the bed sheet.
Yeah, the bed sheet I was working on for a while. I kept going back and forth over certain bits. It's really annoying when you're like draw out for like 10 minutes, like certain lines on a bed sheet, and then look back and be like, nope, that's all wrong. That all needs to go away. I need to start again and rethink.
It's the name of the game, though. It happens.
Yeah, definitely. I think the strength is like knowing when to. It's tough sometimes, especially when I was like drawing in earlier stages, like when I was younger. I would like draw, and because I'd drawn something for an hour, I would finish it and not like it and choose not to go back because I'd just be like, no, I put in so much time into this already. I'm done now. I'm calling it done. And it's better to like it's a real sign of maturity when you reach the point where you can have an almost finished piece and then be like, do you know what? I need to start this again.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have two feelings about that though, because there's the feeling of like perfectionists will never get anything done. There's certain artists that like have had real problems with like blowing their deadlines because everything they have to draw is perfect.
Yeah.
But there's also the idea of like, good enough, which I let's see, what's the point I'm trying to make? Which I believe in that. Like it's to me, it's not so much you're not going to get it perfect every time, but if you do make mistakes, you learn from that with the next drawing you do.
Yeah.
I know people that want to keep making the same drawing over and over again in a sense and never kind of challenge themselves or write the same story over and over again, I should say maybe. And it's like you stop concentrating on making that one story perfect and just learn from every time you do it. That to me is how you get better. But on the other hand, like, at the same time that you're right, that's a point of maturity where it's like, no, I can do better than this. I know I can do better than this.
Why don't we swing on over to your Freddy Krueger piece, because I can see a lot of heavy black in there and it's fantastic. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I wanted a lot of black in this. This whole like cloak, I'm making it black. I really now that I'm really into the drawing, I want to go in and when we're done with the show, I want to scan this in and kind of paint over it and make kind of a cool like retro painted like movie poster out of this. That's kind of what I was thinking when I was doing the composition for this one, when I was laying out the sketches. Is like, how would I approach the movie poster for this like fictional Freddy Krueger like 1930s movie that I have in my brain? And so now I really kind of want to go in and do that, because I think it could be really striking. We'll see how it turns out, but
Yeah, no, it's looking great.
Yeah, I
Thank
think I think that'll be the move. I think your influence in the classical film posters and very retro stylings of the layout will lend itself very well to being painted up like those inspirations. I think it'll be really
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
a lot of it was kind of like what Todd was saying earlier about shape. I wanted to focus something that I do, not even just with this piece, in my work in general now, is I like to think about shape more than just line. I think shape and line can be used really well together, but anytime I can just in black and white go in and there's so many artists that do it really well. Chris Samney just comes to mind. The times where you can tell like, oh, that's just a white shape, and there's some other white shapes maybe behind it, but you can fully see all of the forms. And I feel like that just opens things up a little bit more. And not to degrade our art form, but it elevates it a little bit. I feel like people kind of shit on comic art a lot. And I think those people just haven't looked at the right artists.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's a trap to fall in if you're not like really into comics or really into comic art. You can just kind of easily dismiss it as a kind of a trash piece of entertainment. Cheap. It's I dealt with that a lot in college when I would tell people like, yeah, I want to draw comics. They'd be like, oh, well, that's pretty stupid. A lot of professors just didn't really respect it. I'm like, well, I mean,
Oh yeah.
it's like movies. There's garbage movies, obviously, but you would never say like movies as a whole are a garbage form of entertainment. You would never say that. Novels, same thing.
Well, it's funny you just made a connection to film, and I was going to say a very apt comparison is comics and horror films. It's a medium or a genre.
Yeah.
In this case, horror films is a genre, but I'll connect the two. Where the mass audience tends to think of it as a lesser form of art,
Yeah.
where in reality, it can be the exact opposite. It can be a higher form of art. It can be extremely expressive, extremely intellectually thought out and planned out medium or genre or storytelling tool. And
I often
it's so fascinating that like there's a, like you just said, a misunderstanding of simplicity being bad.
Right.
And with horror films, there's often a lower budget styling to it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's simpler. Or like Chris Samney, how you touched upon using more like black and white spacing. You might look at that and go, well, it's not as rendered as Rick Veitch. So Rick Veitch must be a better illustrator. But in reality, having to plan and lay out all of those black and white areas is just as complex and intellectually challenging.
Yeah, I think about comics a lot. I've made the comparison just in other conversations to, and I think the horror movie thing is the exact same argument. But I've often thought about it like country music, how country music is often just dismissed as garbage, like hick shit. But there's so much like good country music out there. And, same thing with comics. A lot of times people are like, yeah, older comics are good, but newer comics are trash. People say the same thing about country, but there's so many like modern country artists that are doing really cool things. And you're not going to hear them on the radio, just like you're not going to always find good comics if you're looking at, like a Batman or a Superman comic that's like new this month. You're not always going to find something there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love horror, country, and comics. So I am a
Yeah,
garbage
right on.
person.
Yeah. No, I totally hear you. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, you just got to find the good stuff,
Yeah. Well, anytime somebody says you're not supposed to like something, I get suspicious, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna check it out because if I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
supposed to like it, I want to figure out, I remember here towards the end of his life, David Bowie was like, "Oh, I love all kinds of music," and then he was like, "Well, except country," and I was like, "God, really, really?" I was like, "That's
Really?
too bad." I would have thought he would have understood what there was to appreciate about country. I thought that was a little bit of a knock against the guy, in a sense. Well, I shouldn't say that. I love Bowie, but I was like, oh yeah, that's right. He could be a little snobby sometimes.
Yeah, it's one of those things where yeah, if you're into it, you're into it, but there's also a broad appeal.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of times,
Oh yeah.
the
Yeah.
poppy, super popular horror films are excellent for what they are,
Right.
but they're not really artistically appealing most of the time. The real poppy country music is kind of garbage, but there's a place for it.
You'd say that about a lot of music, though, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, pop music is the
Funny
same
that-
way. I love pop music.
Yeah.
Classic pop. I love new pop. There's a lot of pop artists that
Yeah.
are like 20 that I
Yeah.
absolutely adore. And a lot of, the more snobby, uppity, like hipster folks that I know are like, that's garbage. I'm like, is it
Right.
though? Like, there's something there. And I don't think it's
Yeah.
right to immediately dismiss
Yeah.
these people.
Yeah.
A lot of times just because it's, like you would like it if you were, if it's what you grew up on. There's a lot of rock music growing up in the early 2000s that
Yeah.
I know is not good. There's
Oh,
a lot
yeah.
of
Yeah.
there's a lot of like new metal that I know is not great music, but I love it. And
Oh,
there
yeah,
is something there. There is a
Yeah.
lot of like genre bending and fun happening there.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that so many art forms like that get dismissed because like now
Right.
there's kind of a place for like glam metal
Sure.
is I've been listening to a lot of metal here lately. That's why I'm bringing it up. Like there's a lot of glam metal
Well, you
bands that are
should.
they're kind of hard, like they were like the chick bands back in the day, but they're kind of hard and they're kind of good.
Oh,
You don't have to listen to Slayer and Metallica to be a cool kid, I think, anymore.
Right.
You can kind of go, yeah, I listen to Metallica and Motley Crue because it's all
Yeah. Oh,
pretty good.
yeah. I love early Motley Crue.
Yeah, Nate, what you're touching upon, I think, is something with art as a whole, which is there will be an audience
Yeah.
for any piece of art, and it might not be the mass audience that you might be planning for, but there will always
Yeah.
be someone who will appreciate
Yeah.
your artwork, which is kind of a baffling thing. Like I know I've had
Hopefully.
people on, hopefully, I've had some younger people comment on some of my Instagram stuff or reach out to me through social media and comment about like, oh my god, like I love your stuff, and me being like, really? Like,
Yeah.
kid, there are some really great professionals who you should be looking up to. Like, I'm just coming up. Like, don't like. I appreciate the kind words, but like to your point, it's like there's a value in anything with creative input behind it, and even if it's not for everybody, I think if you allow yourself to be open to going, okay, somebody made this because they liked it, or somebody made this for some kind of personal endeavor or reason, and if you
to
can
your
open
point,
yourself to it.
I think that like a lot of times with things that you would consider to be kind of throwaway music, art, movies, whatever, I think you would be surprised by the influences that the people making those things have, because a lot of times it is the things that you hold in high regard have influenced the people that have made the thing, the movie, the comic, the music that you are not really fond of. We're all kind of drawing from the same things, I feel like, a lot of the time.
Sure.
No, that's true. Like, there are so many artists who I'm inspired by that I draw nothing like. That in 50 years, hopefully, if I've made it professionally, somebody might look at my art and not necessarily directly see that influence, but I'm still a fan of and inspired by these creators who I'm not necessarily riffing on or pulling from in any way.
There's
Yeah.
always something to learn,
Yeah.
you know.
But here, I'll hop around to my piece just to
Yeah, how's yours
close
going?
that around. It's going pretty well. I have I have a fair amount of the line work done. I'll probably still be
Yeah.
noodling with my pen by the time that the part 2 ends. But yeah, while we were just talking, I started filling in some of the background elements for the McCready part, the base element, drawing in some of the buildings. There's a fence on the side that I have to draw in underneath this mountain range. But I started doing this thicker outline
Yeah.
because one of my intentions is I'm going
That's
to.
looking great.
Thanks, man. I'm going to black out the entire back on this top part, the sky,
Mm.
and then speckle in with white snow, with
Wow.
white ink or just white acrylic. And then on the other side, to kind of give it like a balance, I'm going to give like a stringy kind of effect throughout the background. It kind of like wires all of the monster bits together. But
Huh.
yeah, I have a fair amount of the structural elements done, particularly on the top half. And then on the bottom half, I still have to do a lot of the monster. Like I have to do this hand over here, all of these crab legs, this whole guy's face, and then all the noodly wiry bits. But yeah, as a whole, it's coming out pretty strong so far. I think by the end of the second half of this episode, I should have most, if not all, of the line work done, which to me is
Cool.
a good place to be at for this piece.
Yeah.
Is it
Wow.
challenging doing like the I'm sure you have to like flip the board up and down. Is that challenging or
It was not, but what's going to be challenging is when I actually go in with the brushwork.
oh, never mind.
Yeah, it was not, but it will be.
He's
Because
like,
I
no,
know,
I got it, dude.
nah, dude, I'm a professional. But what's going to be difficult is you can see it right here. I have planned out that this part of McCready's jacket, where the zipper is going to be blacked out, and then it's going to lead into the undershadow of the double chin of the monster here.
Oh, uh-huh.
But that is going to be more intimidating than the actual line work and structure. I mentioned his name, but I am kind of going with like a Rick Veitch kind of scratchiness. I'm like, when I draw on a scratchiness to begin with, but I'm kind of keeping him in the back of my head while I'm approaching this, and
Yeah.
that
I think that's great. You're a Rick Veitch fan. Sorry, I just had to throw it in there.
yeah, I love Rick Veitch.
I'm pretty excited about that.
But for the line work, that hasn't been an issue. But I know that when I pull out the brush, that I have to be very careful not to overdo areas, but to also overdo certain parts of it so that it actually blends correctly, but not to push it too far that I'm losing detail or that it becomes like a muddy design that you can't read very clearly. But but at this moment, we're in a good spot.
Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to break out the brush. If I'm too nervous for the second part, I'll just start inking in this black background up here, and I'll spend the whole hour doing this whole blackened sky. Like, oh man, that took up so much time. Such a shame. But no, it should be good. I should be fine with getting the line work done and then approaching all of the blacked areas. But yeah, so everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. That kind of wraps up part 1 of episode 8 of this episode of Ink, Drink, Think. Of course, we're drawing monsters and horror characters and talking about horror films.
Yes,
Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you check out the links in the description below. You can find all the links to our social media platforms. Please go there, support our art, our propaganda, our movie posters, our record deals. I don't know if any of us are musicians, but we'll find out at some point.
I'm actually a very famous rock star.
Ah, I knew it.
Yeah.
That explains the long hair.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Anyways, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I have been Michael Pickard, joined by my spooky, scary, talented co-hosts and friends, Johnny Wise, Nate Wells, and Todd Blackwood. Please tune in for part 2. We're going to keep talking about horror movies and finishing up these horror movies.